Hello Year 11s, welcome to the second video for the week. I hope you're sitting down, notebooks out, ready to take notes as normal. Today we're going to look at some real life applications of percentages. And I know when you hear me say that, you're thinking, oh yeah, real life, here they go with the real life thing again. But this time, really, we do use it every day in real life. First of all, GST, Goods and Services Tax, is essentially a tax on almost every goods and service. So there are some things that are exempt. Those things are fresh food, health, education. There's a couple of other minor ones, but largely anything you buy in the supermarket, haircut, electricity, etc. will come with goods and services tax. This essentially means that everything you buy costs 10% more. Alright, let's look at how that works in terms of tax. Well, in terms of interest. Essentially, you just think of it as a special case of finding interest. If you've got a price before GST, you then add 10% on to find the actual price you pay. So, for example, you can look at one of my electricity bills, because they are great fun. This is just a cutout of it. Here is all the charges, totaling up to that. Now, my electricity company likes me, so they guarantee me a discount, and they take off 5%. And from last lesson, you know how to remove 5%. So if I wanted to, I could double check their maths. Then the total I owe is 243. But that's not the total I have to pay, because goods and services tax is then added on. And what they've done is they've found 10% of this amount. So recall, to find 10% of this amount, the pre-GST amount, what they would do is they would take this number, multiply it by 10 on 100, because that finds 10%, and then add on, so multiply it by 10 on 100, and then add on the original. Or in their case, it'll be 243.15 times 10 on 100. That gets you 10%, plus 243.15. Right. This portion here is what that is there, the GST. So finding 10% of the pre-GST price is a way to calculate the GST. Now, please make sure you got that down, because I'm going to erase it and explain how we go backwards if necessary. Ready? Good. Alright, heading backwards. It's possible that you're given the final amount. You're asked, here, pay this. And the question is, well, how much of that is GST? Now, most people will just think, oh, well, you reduce it by 10%. Well, no. Because reducing something by 10% doesn't get it back to where it was after it was increased by 10%. And I'll explain why. If I have $100 and I increase it by 10%, what I end up with is $110. Makes sense? Now, most people think if you decrease $110 by 10%, you get back to where you start with. But if you decrease $110 by 10%, well, 10% of 110 is 11. Decreasing 110 by 11 gets you to 99. So increasing by 10% is not the opposite of decreasing by 10%. They don't work in that proportion. So just finding 10% and going backwards isn't actually a way to find 10% or find the GST that was put into this sum. Instead, we think about, well, how was this calculated? This was calculated by taking this, finding 10% of it, and adding it on. So really, if you think about this, that's like 100% of the original. Add on 10%. You have like 110 lots of it. Or ooh, sorry, technical mishap. We're back in business. So, apologies. What I was trying to say is explain how to go from a final amount here back. And the way we do this, I'm making it sound much more complicated than it really is. To go from here to there, you divide by 11. So if you take 267.47 and somebody asks you, well, what portion of that is GST? You divide it by 11, and that will give you $24.32. And that is the GST component. All right, second portion of today. and I'm sorry this is a longer one than normal, shares and dividends. Now, you might, if you want to, you can look at GST formulas from the textbook on those pages. Shares and dividends. Now, you might think you don't use these in every life and probably won't do. So I'm guessing some of you own shares, and as soon as you guys get jobs, almost all of you will start earning shares by default. The reason for this is because every superannuation fund in Australia invests in shares. So as soon as you start making money, money goes into your super invests in shares. You become one of these people, yeah, on the ads? Alright, so what I have, it makes some sense to then understand how shares work. A share is literally a share of a company. You are sharing in the ownership of a company. Now, typically companies issue millions of shares and you might buy a few thousand of them. But let's say you buy 1% of shares, you are then entitled to 1% of the profits of this company. The profits from shares are called dividends. So if you own 1% of a company, the company will pay dividends, you get 1% of those dividends. And what it looks like is this. This is a cutout of a share statement I received not long ago. The company paid, when it says security, it means share. For every share I owned, it paid 8.5 cents. Oh joy. I owned 600 of them, and accordingly, I got $51. The reason it's not very much is because I didn't own many shares. But that there is the dividend payment. Alright, a couple of formulas you need to know and talk about, and we'll talk more about these in class. Price to earnings ratio is essentially the amount of money a share makes compared to its price. The higher, the better. And it is current share price. It is equal to divided by profit per share, or profit per share you can think of as dividend. Dividend yield is a percentage dividend yield, and that is dividend, excuse my writing, divided by share price times 100. Can you try those ones on your OneNote? The following are prices without GST. Calculate the price after GST will be added, so essentially increase all of them by 10%. If a computer is advertised for that amount, what would the computer have cost without GST? Divide it by 11. And then look at Taj and his Bunyip Share Company. Good luck, and I'll see you tomorrow.